So, this encounter happened many years ago, and I was very young. It was in 2001 or 2002, and I was 11 or 12 at the time. My uncle was interested in purchasing some land near Red Oak, Oklahoma. I don't know exactly where, but it was several acres in a very remote area. My father, mother, and I decided to accompany him one Saturday to scope out the property. From our home, it was a little more than a 3-hour drive, but we all loved riding in the car, so while it was not going to be the most eventful road trip, we all went just to get out of the house. Upon arrival, I remember being very underwhelmed by the place. No houses anywhere near, and hardly even any signs of life at all apart from a few birds, and the wooded area wasn't exactly what I would call picturesque. Still, we parked our car off the road to go explore the woods a little. My uncle was talking about buying the land for hunting, not really my cup of tea. As we walked through the woods, it was a very nice day, but still something felt off. Everyone in our group remarked about the eerie feeling, but my dad and uncle seemed to laugh it off. My mum had goosebumps and kept looking over her shoulder, which made me on edge too. She was very insistent that it was weird, and she wanted to leave, saying it felt like she was being watched. After a bit of hiking, I noticed that there was a small red building. I've seen bigger storage sheds in the suburbs, but it looked well built. My uncle said there was nothing about it on the listing, so we went to peek inside. The door was open, and inside there were open cans of food, a ratty blanket on the floor, and it stunk unlike anything I'd ever smelled before. Following this discovery, we all agreed it would be best to just get back in the car, and if it was some crazy hermit living in the woods, we didn't want to be around to find him. Only issue, we had walked pretty far into the woods, and now weren't exactly sure which direction was correct. The eerie feeling really amped up, and we were all on edge. We ended up trekking another mile before we finally found the road, but we were farther down from where we had parked the car, but at least we could just follow the road now. Walking along the road, we came across a truly unsettling sight. Right in the middle of the asphalt was a dark grey cat on fire. I have absolutely no idea why a cat was out in the middle of nowhere, or how it came to be killed and set alight. Obviously, this had just happened, but there was no one in sight. Naturally, we ran the rest of the way to the car. There was a huge scratch in the paint all the way down the side from the hood to the trunk. Thankfully, that was the only damage, and my dad was able to start it without any trouble, and we drove away for as fast as we possibly could. My heart is sped up just recounting this moment, definitely one of the scariest of my life. Needless to say, my uncle did not buy the land, and I'll always remember this terrifying encounter, but like anything over time, I just sort of pushed it to the back of my mind, and it just came to be one of those odd moments you occasionally retell at family get-togethers years later. So much that it's almost just a funny story. The reason I'm sharing this is because I was reminded of it last night while binge-watching some episodes of BuzzFeed Unsolved on YouTube, and they shared a story of a family that disappeared in the same area while also looking at some land for sale. The disappearance of the Jamison family is the name of the mystery in the video if you're interested. The family died in the same area we were searching, roughly 7 years after we made our trip there. There are many theories about their deaths, including the allegations of some sort of cult in the area, complete with something about dead cats. Coincidence? Probably, but the whole story gave me chills. So, who knows if my family narrowly avoided being killed by some cult or whatever, or if we just stumbled upon a hermit who didn't want us in his woods. This story takes place in North Italy back in 2014. It was early September. A friend of mine suggested we take a short hike in the woods near his town. I obviously agreed, since I love hiking and nature. We prepared our backpacks, grabbed some food, and drove to the place. My friend knew the area very well, so we didn't take a map. We didn't have flashlights either, since we planned to return to the car in a few hours, and in early September, daylight lasts for pretty long. As we went deeper into the woods, we saw beautiful spots, small rivers, and a pair of caves that we explored. They were pretty small and only had one big chamber. We had lunch and proceeded to follow a trail in a deeply wooded area. After a bit more than half an hour, we arrived behind a pretty large clearance in the trees. And here comes the weird part. In that clearance, there was a bunch of people, around 4 or 5, dressed normally. They were simply talking and laughing. No satanic cults, dreadful chants, praying in circles, etc. Just super ordinary people like me and my friend talking to each other. They obviously saw us too, since the clearing had no trees or rocks to cover the view, and we couldn't avoid that, since the trail, after a deep curve, immediately cuts into the clearing. We said while approaching them, "Hey there, what's up?" They didn't answer back and started to stare at us without saying a single word. This obviously launched a huge red flag. We stopped too, and I looked at my mate. He looked back at me, obviously concerned as well. We again said, "Hey." No answers. I started to feel uneasy, so we decided to turn back to the car. But soon after we turned to go back, we realized they started to follow us. As we noticed it, we yelled, "Why are you following us? Did we do something wrong?" Yeah, we were still pretty young and dumb. No answer. Of course, we then proceeded to walk faster and tried to get off the trail. Another pretty dumb choice, but again, my friend knew the area well. But they were always about 15 meters behind us. We started to panic, looked at each other and agreed to make a run for it. As soon as we began running, we heard them start chasing after us. This made us freak out, and we did our best to put more distance between us and them. Another thing that made me panic was the fact that we were, as I said, around 40 minutes away from the car at that point, and we were in a very isolated area, so I didn't like our chances. At some point, when we were about halfway back, we noticed that they weren't behind us anymore. We thought that maybe we managed to make them lose track of us. Like I said, the area was heavily wooded and has plenty of slopes, so it's easy to get lost if you're not used to it. We hid behind a thick bush and tried to listen. Silence. No footsteps, no voices. And keep in mind that, even when they were following us, they didn't say a single word. So we breathed a sigh of relief and managed to return to the car, trying our best to be as silent as possible. We jumped in the car and raced the fuck out of there, but it doesn't end here. As we left the woods, we saw another car slip out from a side road and start following us. We then realized that they probably never lost sight of us. We are sure that they were the same people since 1, they were basically tailgating us, 2, the area is rarely visited and there weren't any other cars in the car park other than my friend's, and 3, their car had no plates. We drove back to my friend's town, purposefully not back to his house. Taking all the back roads, and every turn we made, they did as well. As we reached the town, they made a U-turn and went back in the direction of the woods. We were fucking terrified, and we immediately called the police. We also informed the people that were in the small town square as they approached us, since me and my friend were basically crying as we got out of the car, to check the area out, but no evidence of activity came up in the following hours. They never ever showed up anymore in the following days, but we were too paranoid for weeks to even leave our houses. Growing up in the Appalachian Mountains, I could give you a million times as a kid and young adult I felt scared or paranoid playing in the woods. It's a beautiful place, and I spent my entire childhood getting lost, not really, out there by myself or with my friends. As kids, we never got too far out there, but you could actually see the progression of us venturing further and further out as we got older, because of the forts and carvings we would leave. This one particular time, like 1,000 times before, my friend and I had just graduated high school. It was our last summer of freedom, and we spent the entire summer camping and hiking out there. We had decided to try and find a new place to set up camp, and walked for what felt like a few miles before we came along to a nice clearing. The area was relatively new to both of us. We got the camp set up and got a fire going. The plan was to wait until nightfall, smoke some weed, play some Monopoly. For sake of backstory, my friend and I, my buddy is a smaller, really goofy guy who comes from a family of foresters and always had a deep understanding of all the trees and different plants he came across. He had no fear of going camping out by himself. If I had spent 10,000 hours in the woods, he probably spent 50,000. As for me, I'm a taller, sturdier guy, and as we got older, I spent more time worried about women and sports, and the woods became a place for small parties. Also, I never had the balls to camp out alone. In fact, older me wouldn't go far at all when I was alone, because I could never shake the feeling of being watched. Which was just paranoia, but still an uneasy feeling. Anyways, camp is set, fire is going, but it's getting lower and needs some wood. Sun is down and we're both cutting up and having a good time. My friend is sitting on his little chair he always brought and loading up his makeshift bong, and I was crouched breaking some excess limbs off some logs that we had gathered for the fire. All of a sudden, this strong breeze cuts through the clearing. I couldn't tell you if it was the suddenness of it or what, but my friend and I both stopped immediately and looked at each other. The breeze went just long enough to flicker our fire down to a small flame. We both sat completely still in almost total darkness. Neither of us said a word. Across from us, on the other side of the fire, we could hear footsteps. They sounded like somebody was running and would slow to a walk and then run again. Definitely on two legs. By the sound of it, they were pacing back and forth over the same spot. Then, just like it started, it stopped, with a softer crunch on the underbrush. I knew by the sound that it had taken a crouch. I was crouched still, and I knew that I was staring right at them in the dark. My friend grabbed my shoulder and said, "Buddy," and when he did, I felt this surge of fear come over me. I could feel it and hear it in him. I'd been so fixed on the footsteps and rationalizing what I heard that I hadn't even considered being afraid. But this was true fear. It was raw and made me feel helpless. I could hear my friend, after a while, grab some leaves, and he dropped them on the fire. For the split second the leaves covered the fire, we were in pure darkness. Then the fire sprang to life. We both quickly grabbed more leaves and brush and threw it on the fire. I got some sticks and logs on there, and neither of us took our eyes off the spot, or moved much for over an hour. Finally, the leaves crunched, and they slowly walked off. Whoever they were, they had sat crouched, watching us, without moving for far longer than any animal would. It wasn't until after the footsteps disappeared that I realized the smell had disappeared as well. It smelled like a paper mill. For the rest of the night, besides whispered remarks, neither of us really moved or stopped looking at the spot. Nobody went into the tent, and I had a very short, light sleep, sitting on the ground with my head rested on my hands. My friend never went to sleep. In the morning, we packed up and silently walked back home. To this day, we talk about it. In the 7 or 8 years since it happened, my forester friend has not camped by himself.